Hello, everybody, and welcome to week two of the LeanTossup College Football Podcast. That was that was a heck of a week. It was a pretty long week too. The final game finally ended there on Monday night with Clemson deciding to go for a random, completely pointless touchdown with a better looking quarterback than they started the game with. But that's we'll talk a bit more about that later. But yeah, week one is officially in the books now. I am joined, as always, by my co-host BuckMetrics to talk about it and the games for the next week. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm going through five detox of 5 days of football, but I'm definitely better than Jeff Collins is today.
Yeah, that was not fun. I like they at moments they look like they could like legitimately compete in that game, and then they lose it by 31.
Yeah.
Um, just wow, not good, not good for them, and in some ways not even like slightly worse for Clemson. Like DJ looked horrible at times. Like, well, I mean he looked slightly better, but like it was just the offense was extremely unimaginative. It was like they ran the ball way too many times. They were like basically they wouldn't let him throw the ball basically anywhere. It was just not a good look for a Clemson team that is fourth, I think, in one of the polls. I can't remember which poll it is, but it's like they're like the top five team there. Um, yeah. What and do you have any thoughts on that game before we
Yeah,
get into it?
it's just it became almost sad and he when he did, appear to be a little better, it was sad in that the play-by-play and color and both the color guys were, talking about him like he's a rookie in his first start who has an 85 mile an hour fastball and only one off speed pitch. I mean, it was just kind of like, hey, that a boy. See, you can do it. It wasn't really like, yeah, this is the Clemson quarterback, of a top five team. It was more like, hey, that a boy. This guy might make it at Eastern Michigan or something. It was, it was kind of sad.
I mean, it's hard to forget. Well, it's easy to for some people. I think it's easy to remember that this is a guy who came in, filled Trevor Lawrence's shoes, took down Notre Dame because
Hmm.
Trevor Lawrence had COVID back in the 2021 season. Like basically help them beat Clemson, help them beat Notre Dame to basically secure a slot in the college football playoff.
Yeah.
And now we're talking about this guy. He can't throw the ball more than like 5 yards down the field, and like he could do some running plays, but like that offense was very anemic, and they have a lot. Like, can Florida State beat them? Florida State didn't look horrible against LSU. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if this team loses to Florida State and like a couple other teams. Like, there could be in really big trouble in the ACC this year.
Yep. Absolutely. Agree.
So, anyways, let's get started with our dashboard. So, what just happened this last weekend? Where are we now, and what happens next? I'll let you begin.
Okay, so the executive dashboard, the first window, informing the narrative. These are the events that basically either confirm or rebut narratives that we've had coming into the week. The first thing that sticks out to me, Oklahoma State gives up 546 yards and 44 points to Central Michigan. 6.2 yards per play. Kind of in line, actually an extreme extreme version that's in line with when I said they're losing a lot and whatever they do have is going to be a little transition to Derek Mason. That's more than a little transition. That was interesting. Definitely something to remember. Um, Secondly, one thing that really sticks out to me, Toledo held Long Island U to 117 yards. Now, that would not be so remarkable, but that's a really small number. And this really kind of reinforces what I had said when we talked about the MAC. And I said, keep an eye on Toledo at San Diego State. We kind of put that in the interesting category. I think that game becomes extremely interesting based on what we saw at San Diego State Saturday. Temple got all of 179 yards and 0 points at Duke. And Temple was the first team, fittingly, that I spoke about in the first preseason pod. And I said, let's see if it's going to be rough for them, really, really rough for them this year when they play UMass. And that game's in game five. And I think we can actually move that narrative up to, today. I think Temple's going to be, they have bottom 10 national potential. Next, James Madison University in their first game as a member of the F or as of the Sun Belt and FBS. Um, They beat Middle Tennessee State 44-7. They outgained them by 548 to 119. I bring this up because when we talked about the Sun Belt East, I had mentioned that Georgia Southern is in a world of hurt because they're stuck behind a bunch of teams that are in division that know how to win. And what I liked about JMU is that they had a winning pedigree. I didn't know if they had the talent. Now, Middle Tennessee is not by any means a great Conference USA team, but they're not as bad as some of these other really bad teams we like to talk about. They're garden variety poor. JMU just completely dump trucked them, and so I think that this just shows just how tough that Sun Belt East is. So number one, Georgia Southern is in for a very rough ride in their division, and I think it's going to be a dogfight. I can't see the winner of the Sun Belt East having less than 2 losses in conference. Next thing that sticks out to me, Buffalo got less than 300 yards at Maryland. Maryland is just notorious for having great offenses and horrible defenses. I don't remember if we talked about Buffalo in when we talked about the MAC, but I was very skeptical about their new coach that replaced Leipold, and the excuses that were made for him were a little bit legitimate, but seemed a lot more made up. It's not like he was going to a rebuild. He was taking over a very good program. And this just kind of shows me that Buffalo is, I think, not only just in a bad spot, but really, headed in the wrong direction. And last, Charlotte, the 49ers give up almost 560 yards to William and Mary. My goodness. They were only 4-point favorites over William and Mary. They got skunked. Um, Bringing this up because it's really in line with what I had said after week 0, which is that Charlotte has serious, serious problems on defense. Any thoughts on any of those?
Um, no, a lot of those are really important to keep an eye on. Temple again, I think Temple could be a bottom 5 team in the FBS this year. Um, JMU, welcome to the league. It's a nice welcome for them. But Maryland, I think that was more Maryland struggling. Like they could not put that Buffalo team away. Um, and yeah, I think if I was actually add one more point to this, I'd actually say that one interesting thing is that if you look at Arizona and Kansas, kind of when we talk about coaching, both those teams seem to be heading in the right direction. Kansas obliterated a D2 team. Now, again, that's not necessarily particularly interesting or fascinating, but last year they really struggled to put away a D2 team in their opening game of the season. But they're already at 1 win, and Arizona, another team we've been looking at, we sometimes like Jed Fish as a head coach. They put away San Diego State. So again, those are 2 programs, and it can just show how good a new head coach, when you put a head coach that a lot of people like into a program, that they can really start trending in the right direction.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely agree. All right. So the next window of the dashboard, market intelligence. So these are based on opening lines from Circa on Sunday at around 11 a.m. Pacific is when they release those. I consider them the official voice of opening and closing lines. So these have moved, but I found these really interesting of the opening lines. Boise State giving only 15 to New Mexico. New Mexico has really struggled for years and years and years. I thought Danny Gonzalez was going to improve them. He really has made very minimal progress, and Boise State giving only 15 to a team that bad is eye-opening, shocking.
It's 16 and a half now, but still though that's still under 3 touchdowns, right? So that's still not a horrible bet necessarily. That is a late Friday night game.
Yeah, so does that sound like you like Boise?
I mean, again, like we didn't like Boise before, and to be fair, we still
Yeah.
don't particularly like Boise as a team. But again, it's New Mexico, right? Like they could win by this game by 30, and we could still be like, yeah, they still suck, right? So, but yeah, 15, and that's still a low number for a really bad New Mexico team. And again, you're Boise State, right? You're supposed to be a lot better than this, but yeah. 16 and a half makes you think, but maybe I think Boise might be the play there, but we'll have to see.
Wow. I'm kind of socking that away for later in terms of this could be a really, even a worse season for Boise than I kind of painted it out in the preview. Um, it's interesting. Just think about 2 years ago when Harsin was still there. This would have been 30. Wow. That's quite a change in a very short period of time. Next opening line that stood out to me, Marshall at Notre Dame. Notre Dame giving only 18. Reason that stands out to me is Notre Dame had a great defense last year. We talked about this when we talked about them in the preview. Their defense figured to be, even improved off of that, and I think they showed every bit of that at Ohio State. Now, Ohio State, it's tough when you lose, not just when you lose a guy like Smith and Jigba, but particularly the game in which you lose him is when it's the most treacherous because you don't really have a game plan around that. But Notre Dame's defense is still for real. And it's just interesting that a defense that good is only favored by 18 over a Conference US. Well, they're basically a Conference USA team. They're in the Sun Belt this year, but they're coming from Conference USA, which I had as the second worst. It now like that's up to 20 and a half. It's just interesting that like the first blush is the market saying we don't really believe in this Notre Dame offense, and I think a
Yeah.
pretty good reason.
Yeah, I mean that was the one big takeaway was that like because again when you watch that game you could be like okay Ohio State is bad or you could say okay maybe Notre Dame's defense is really good but Notre Dame's offense was not like they could like again this was and again to be fair you have to look at this the other way Ohio State's defense last year was horrible right like that defense just bled yards to a lot of teams and it could not stop the run. It lost to Oregon. It lost to Michigan. Just ran the ball down their throats. Notre Dame tried to run the ball a lot. That was not particularly effective. So and then throwing the ball was not particularly effective with Tyler Buckner either. So that's concerning. Now again, this is a great get right spot for Notre Dame here. It's Marshall even 20 and a half. It's still lower than 21. Like Notre Dame could win that game 21-0 and then that'd be the cover, right? That's a little iffy though, but that could be what that is, right? That defense is for real, and maybe Ohio State's defense has gotten better, right? I think we're trying to compare Notre Dame's current offense to Ohio State's last year's defense. And here's the thing, like we'll know, right? I think Ohio State plays Penn State, I think next week, if I'm not mistaken. Not this week, next week. So like let's see what this Ohio State defense does in the next couple weeks. If it does really well, then okay, maybe we can talk a little bit better of the Notre Dame offense. But if it's the same old Ohio State defense, then this Notre Dame team has a problem, and it needs to solve that fast.
Yeah, I'm just checking real quick. I didn't think that Marshall was. I mean, they were okay on defense. They were above average, but I'm just thinking I can't see Marshall getting over 14 points. It's just the bars base of the market saying Notre Dame's not going to score 35 against this is not to demean Marshall in any way, but there's just they're coming out of Conference USA, which is just a really poor conference. Interesting. Yeah, something to keep an eye on. Next game that or next opening line stuck out to me was Kansas State giving 8 at home to Missouri. Just interesting that it's been kind of the sneaky smart guy team, Kansas State, and they're giving more than a touchdown to an SEC team. Now Missouri is hardly the best of the SEC, but they're an SEC team and they're not a pretend SEC team like Vanderbilt. That's come down to 7.5. It just again kind of speaks to a lot of belief, in Kansas State.
Yeah, do you think that gets down to less than 7?
I don't. I mean, it's down to 7.5. I think that just looks like a little bit of the flab was trimmed off the number. I think that seven's such a big number. I think it just stays there. I think there's just like I said, if you're monitoring like the right accounts on Twitter, there was so much belief preseason in Kansas State, and this just really is just a really firm data point supporting that.
I definitely think it's earned. Like I look at that number and I might want Kansas State there. I think they could definitely like with Adrian Martinez. I think
Yeah.
they could definitely do something there. I think that's not maybe a bad play at all.
And honestly, just kind of the whole scenario that I drew up in the preseason pod about Adrian Martinez was doing kind of God's work in Nebraska, and you look at just what a joke they are still, and he's got to be laughing, and he was hurt too, and they're probably thinking, yeah, this guy had good numbers and just at an absolute clown show. Now that he's got a really, really good coach and a well-defined system, they could really do something.
Well, and this is what I said on the pod last week, right? We always viewed Nebraska as this extremely unlucky team that was due for like positive regression to the mean in terms of luck. That's just not happening. But at the same time, it now just my now thesis of Nebraska is it's basically a bad coaching staff being propped up by talent, and that would the last year's talent was basically Adrian Martinez.
Hmm.
if he goes and succeeds in Kansas, that actually would just prove that thesis basically. So yeah, like
Yeah.
I like Kansas State here, and maybe I might play some props on that one, but we'll have to see. But yeah, I think Kansas State's the play.
Yeah. I definitely agree. This really grabbed my attention. It's moved a lot since. So Circa opened Northwestern giving 6, and now that's up to 10. Um, am I crazy in reading a lot into the 6? Sorry, Northwestern hosting Duke.
Mhm.
And the reason I can kind of believe that is I'm very skeptical of what I saw in Ireland and just, the game of his life for Holinsky, and just inevitably waiting for Nebraska to do things like just make stupid plays and miss tackles and just be out of position. Um, I think a lot of, as I kind of speak through it, I think a lot of just the dumb stuff that Nebraska did, you're not going to see Duke doing. Duke is in a rebuild mode, but Mike Elko is an absolutely proven defensive guy, and I think that's what I read into that 6. That number is so small, and it, now that it's up to 10, yeah, it does look small. I'm kind of going to use that as initial data point and maybe grab the points, he said.
Yeah, I'm completely on board with you. That number at like even at -6 that looked fraudulent, and apparently people have taken that -6 and run with it to 10. Like now you're not only just getting a touchdown, but you're also now getting a touchdown and a field goal. Like
Hmm.
I love that 10, and the thing of it is like that Nebraska, like I watched that game. The Northwestern quarterback was bad. Like Casey Thompson was a much
Yeah.
better quarterback. They
Yeah.
were not a particularly good team. Nebraska just screwed it up, and they almost screwed it up against a D2 team this year. This week they were tied 7-7 at the half with a D2 team.
Yeah.
Now they pulled it out in the fourth quarter, which again that should have happened 2 quarters before then. But again, like I. I think that Nebraska I think Northwestern got lucky, and I don't trust that Nebraska Northwestern quarterback. I think
Mm-mm.
Duke's quarterback is actually pretty good. Yeah, I'm taking the points. I might even take the money line on that one. That's like I think Duke could is primed for an upset here. This is the battle of like two like academic universities here. So yeah, let's go. Like one's giving 10 points, the other I think you take the points.
Yeah. And I guess along those same lines, the total on this is posted. I've got 58 right now. And going back to, what I said, my years of nerdery have taught me to kind of look at these numbers, just these mundane numbers. The average total in a football game is 56. I've got two really a bad offense and a suspect offense, and I've got at least one really good defensive coach going against a very proven shaky quarterback. That 58 seems high to me. I might just put a really small one on that, just to kind of reinforce. Just I guess the worst case is say Duke's offense just doesn't show up. I don't think Northwestern is going to make this an above average scoring game, especially with the pace they're going to play and with the pace at which Duke has to play. Really,
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. The play here is, in my opinion, it's Duke.
yeah. This next one, let me see if I can find the price now. It's
I have the price now. Yeah,
okay. So Houston opened up Pick'em at Texas Tech. What is that now?
it is Houston +3.
Wow, really?
Yeah,
Okay. So that kind of blows my mind.
I agree. It seems crazy, but like I kind of want Texas Tech.
Yeah. I mean, preseason, I was, I appreciated that Texas had a really good season last year. They were one of the luckier teams, and they just really they didn't show any reason to improve a lot. It's not like they were super young or going up the learning curve or anything on either side of the ball. And Texas Tech was surprising that, they've got, you know, Kitley as an offensive coordinator and DeRuiter as a defensive coordinator. Reinforcing, I didn't say they were going to win. I said they were the kind of team that was ready to strike at a soft target. I don't know if Houston's a soft target. It's interesting though Texas Tech is favored. Maybe this is just maybe they kind of took some of the advanced thinking out of it and just said, okay, Power Five against G5, and the Power Five's at home. Maybe it just boiled down to that.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. I think it's yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't hate this will actually be a Big 12. This will be a Big 12 matchup
Yeah,
next year.
yeah,
So
well,
a big Big 12 versus Big 12 matchup. But yeah, I don't want to touch this at this line. I think it's probably might like Texas Tech might actually have some expectations this year. And again, they're -3 against Houston, a D2 team that really looked bad against UTSA last week. Let's see how this game shakes out. Like we could be looking at Texas Tech again. I'm sure they actually have to play everybody in the Big 12. So like they're gonna play Baylor, they're gonna be playing Texas, they're gonna play Oklahoma. That might be a team we look to in a couple weeks on some value spots here. So I think maybe props for this game is the best, but yeah, like the Houston +3 is really attractive though, but Texas Tech might just be the better team.
Yeah, I think at the preseason pod, I actually called out. I'm looking forward to September 24th, so it's gonna be week 4. Texas is at Texas Tech. I think I called that out as the soft target that Texas Tech was ready to strike at. Um, so we'll see. That's going to be interesting in just 2 weeks. Texas has got an interesting run here. They're after Alabama, they host UTSA, could be sneaky tough, and then at Texas Tech, first road game of the season. Interesting games for Texas coming up.
Yes.
Um, and then lastly, under market intelligence, I got a couple paired here together. UNLV +13 at Cal and Kansas +14 at West Virginia, and I think my guy has that down to 13.5 for Kansas.
Yeah, 13.5, but 13 for UNLV at Cal still sticks. Yeah.
Yeah, I paired these because these are two programs on the road that have just been kind of left for dead forever, and they've got different degrees of like secret coming back to life, if you will. I think Kansas is a little more on the grid with that one of their few wins last year being that one over Texas that kind of got them some attention, and their coach is a lot more well known. I found it interesting though that UNLV is actually playing at a Pac-12 school, and it's roughly the same spread. And UNLV is kind of still not on anybody's radar. The reminder is before the season when I was in Vegas, I was looking when I was doing all my bets and sketching out what I was going to do. My analysis was bet on UNLV over 4.5, and by the time I got to Vegas, it actually been bet down to 4. So I don't even know if you can say UNLV is on nobody's radar. As long maybe it's more of like people who have them on their radar don't believe in them. So
They're already a quarter of the way there.
yeah, they are. They are.
Yeah, I absolutely love Kansas here. I was able to nab Kansas, I think, on Sunday at 14.5. I love that. I actually do like the money line here too. Like this West Virginia team, yeah, they took Pitt to the wire basically. But I kind of think that's more both those teams being bad. Like this is the thing you always have to think, right? When you see two teams have a really close week 1 matchup, does that mean that both of them are good or both of them are bad? Right. So I think what people are saying is they're saying, okay, because like Pitt is still in. If you look at the AP and coaches poll this week, they're still both those teams are still ranked. Like, sorry, Pitt is still ranked. Like they barely moved. Like their ranking didn't change at all from last week, which it should have, considering the fact that an unranked West Virginia team almost beat them, if not for an insanely lucky pick six at the end near the end of the game. Which like it wasn't even a pick six; it was deflected off of a wide receiver's hand into the arms of a DB and then ran in. Like so that was not really their fault. But no, like this Kansas team destroyed a D2 team. Now again, that's not necessarily the most emblematic of anything, but at the same time, this is a Kansas team that has struggled for a long time, a very, very long time. And if this team believes they can win, and that West Virginia team had a lot of mistakes, that was not a particularly amazing performance out of West Virginia. That team could have crushed that Pitt team, and they just didn't. They like there's a lot of times when they let up, they let soft plays through. They couldn't capitalize on drives. So like yeah, no, give me Kansas, give me the points. This team, if this team believes in itself, watch out for this team. This team could be very dangerous.
Yeah, yeah. No, they're really the team you don't want to play in conference, especially because it's going to be impossible to get your team up, except for Texas. And ironically, that's something that Sark specializes in is just losing the game like that. So
The other yeah, it's Lance Leopold, right? 'Cause we talked about this last year. He came in, he replaced Les Miles, rebuilt this team up last year. It was bad last year. They got the 2 wins. They got the 2 wins against a D1 team in Texas, which is hilarious. But then look at the leap from year 1 to year 2. And again, we're obviously projecting a little bit of that. But like I think this team is a lot better and their quarterback had it
yeah,
like they had a really good day. So Yeah, give me the points. That West Virginia team was pretty shaky. Give me the points.
Yep. Yep. And yeah, his third year is when they made a big step up, but they made a step up from year one to year two at Buffalo too. So he's kind of,
Next off season, we want to see Big 12 lines. We might be the first one. We might be like Kansas 20-1 to win the Big 12.
wow. Well, the new Big 12, why not, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that
No,
might be
no, no.
something I'm
They'll
going to
still
look
have,
at.
yeah, they'll still have Texas and Oklahoma. I can't go that boldly. Um, all right. So dashboard, next box, BBMI, brand-based market inertia. There seems to be some movement on these lines too. Maryland opened at giving 23 to Charlotte. I think that's up to 27 now, which makes more sense. I don't
Yeah,
know why it would be that short. That just kind of speaks to, I don't know, people just thinking Maryland still has problems on defense, and I guess believing in Chris Reynolds as a good quarterback for Charlotte. Yeah, is it 27 now? Is that what you're seeing?
I've got 27.
Yeah.
That was a weird game, like because usually the Tagovailoa, who's the Maryland quarterback, usually throws a ton of passing touchdowns, but they decided to start running the ball in last time. And the thing was, this was one of the only games on at noon, so I actually watched a lot of this game. Um, but like, yeah, it was not the greatest look by Maryland, but at the same point in time, yeah, I think Charlotte, my team might be in really bad shape. So yeah, you can't bet on the Charlotte team right now.
No, I think the play there might be Maryland in the first half. Um, who knows what you're going to do at the end of the game? We've talked about, the spreads at some point just become a matter of, are you betting on, how soon do the backups come in and all that.
Minus 15.5 first half.
Wow, really? I thought it'd be way higher than that. Yeah, that's definitely, if that's under 17, I will definitely play that. Um, then the other one, Air Force opened giving only 15 to Colorado, and I've got a little more on Colorado later. But this just seems like, I don't know if it's an appreciation for or lack of understanding of just how bad Colorado is. If there's still a little of that 2020 magic built into what some of these early lines are, or if people are just not really appreciating that Air Force last year took a big step forward and they showed no signs of giving it back. I think that's up to 17 now.
17.5. Yeah.
Wow, yeah, that makes more sense. Still, I think that just I can't see that one being close. You know,
That Colorado performance against TCU was not particularly fun. I don't. I think that we could see that line. Like I would not hate that line right now. I think that could.
yeah,
Yeah, like Air Force was really good. I think who they play last week.
Northern Iowa.
Yeah, they crushed them. I think. Yeah.
They got like 700 yards.
Yeah, it was not particularly close. Let me just see if there's a 17 on another book I have. But yeah, I do really like Air Force. I like them.
Yeah.
No, 17.5 both books. Yeah.
Okay. Next window. My top quarterbacks. So these are the ones that have the top QB plus versus FBS only so far through week one. Number one, Tanner Mordecai for SMU makes sense. Had a very good season last year. Rhett Lashley comes into SMU, picks up where Sonny left off, and they beat North Texas, which they've made a habit of. They just absolutely destroyed them. Number two, Keaton Slovis. I did not see this coming. I spent a good amount of the offseason ripping him apart. There's still plenty of time, but for this week, all props to Mr. Slovis. Number three, not surprisingly, Stetson Bennett of Georgia. We'll have a little bit more on that game later. Number four, Caleb Williams of USC. We'll get to USC later. He was pretty much just perfect. I think he had only 3 incompletions, and he threw for like 11 yards a pass. I know it was Rice, but USC doesn't play like that usually against those bad teams. And number five, Riley Leonard of Duke. Hello. Now again, it was against Temple, but pretty interesting data point for that Duke at Northwestern getting 10.
Duke plus 10. Duke
Yeah,
money line. Let's do this.
not a bad idea. Yeah. So the top receivers. So these are the most productive based on yardage and catches. Number one, Rasheed Rice of SMU. I've not heard of him, but that makes sense based with what SMU did against North Texas. Number two, Jaquan Burton at Florida Atlantic. They've scored a lot of points in 2 games. Unfortunately, they did not score enough in Utah or at Ohio last week, but the offense really has it all together. The next 3 I'm going to put together, it's very interesting. We have Tyron Smith and Ronaldo Flores of UTEP, and then Jake McCowan of Arizona. So we've got 3 receivers developed by my guy, Dana Dimmel at UTEP. So I am not giving up on the UTEP over 5.5. There is hope, just like I said last week.
There's definitely hope. I'm not giving up on UTEP over. I mean, again, they played North Texas, and then they also played Oklahoma. So it's definitely not
Yeah.
fair to say that their season is over. But yeah, give there's some hope for UTEP. I don't think they're completely done yet.
Yep. You have two receivers that are that explosive. You're not going to be out of any game, except apparently if you're at Oklahoma. But you know what I mean. You're not out of any conference game. Next window, the USC update. So, very, very nice break for us Trojan fans. The 66 points that they scored against Rice was the most since 2008 at Washington State. If anybody is that old and remembers it like me, it was against the ill-fated Paul Wolf, Washington State Cougars. Paul Wolf was the butt of a lot of jokes from that point forward among me and my friends. Um, Caleb Williams, like I said, have got him as the fourth best quarterback in FBS for week one. They had no turnovers against Rice, and that's only the fourth time. They only did that four times in the preceding three seasons. It's a great way to start. Um, Rayleigh Brown in the preseason pod about USC, I said I don't know where he fits, and I got to say I know exactly where he fits. I don't know if in Canada, because you all are more well balanced than we are. You know, we have a concept here of FU money, where basically you just walk around and you have FU money. Rayleigh Brown has FU talent. He's just one of those guys that just like, I don't want to say you can't stop, but it's like, oh no, what are we gonna do about this guy? And I don't like when that much is, you're a true freshman is that much of a fulcrum player, but it's awesome when you have one of those guys at running back and another one at receiver and Jordan Addison. This is just the kind of dimension that just keeps you up at night if you're going against that kind of offense, because you're just thinking, I don't know what to do. It's going to be, you know, the optimism I had about the passing game is really just kind of spread more to the entire offense if he could stay healthy. Um, the defense actually, um, if I'm going by opponents QB plus so far this season, they're actually number two in FBS behind only Tulane. Tulane played some really, really stiff team. I can't remember who it is. Now, part of that is because USC had four interceptions, and that really, really skews the numbers. But even if we exclude the interceptions, they're still 40th, which is a huge step up. I think they were like 90th or something like that last year. So just and again, it's Rice, and Rice actually was down to their backup quarterback. But seasons past, they would have found a way to make this guy a bit of a hero for a while. Something that USC has not seen for years is halftime adjustments. And what was interesting in the first half, the defense gave up 6.4 yards per play. After halftime, they gave only 2.2 yards per play. Probably a lot of it was just settling down. You're going to have a lot of first, that initial first game excitement and just, overplaying and stuff. But that's just, an amazing just difference in the defense, just something that we haven't seen forever. The front four is still a concern, and actually one of their better defensive linemen, who looked like one of the steadiest, showed up to practice today with his hand in a cast. So that's a concern going against Stanford. USC is they opened at 12 at Stanford. Um, it went down to 8. I grabbed it at 8 on my from my guy. I think it was this afternoon. I made it minus 13, and what's interesting is I kind of took that as the average of, if I was USC, I wouldn't give more than 8 or 9. And if I was Stanford, I'd need at least 17. So I just averaged those to 13. And when I see the number pop below that, and when USC is better than I expected in week one this early, I definitely had to grab that number.
Yeah, I agree. I got it at 9.5. I grabbed some at 9.5. It's down to 9, but not a huge difference between 9.5 and 9. So, but yeah, I really I like USC this weekend. Let's see how good this Trojan team actually is.
And they're actually the primetime game on ABC, which
Oh,
is just,
nice.
yeah, it's I just the media, I guess television really realizes they need football to be a national game for their contracts to be worth something. So they're going to do everything they can to prop up USC,
Mhm.
and at the very least make them a story and get more interest in the Pacific time zone. Okay, my futures bets. So catching up on what I am happy about and what I am less than happy about in terms of the future bets that I disclosed to everybody. San Diego State under 8 wins. They not only lost by 18 points, they got almost doubled up on yardage, 461 to 232 by Arizona. And Arizona's awesome new passing attack of Jaden Delora, my guy Jacob Cowing, and I'm his first name starts with a T and his last name is McMillan, and he's from Servite High School out here in Orange County. Um, I don't know how you say his first name, but the guy's a freaking talent. He's like 6'4", very fast, can catch the ball. Looked like he got hurt, but that is not a fun team to play Arizona. I thought they'd be good. I didn't have the guts to take them over, but I think as I characterized it, I pushed people out of line to bet San Diego State under 8 wins, and I am delighted to have done so.
Yeah,
That is a lot of Brady Hoke and very little of Rocky Long left in that program right now.
yeah, where that's so I had them under. I think I had them under 7.5, which
Yeah,
is
that's what it
basic.
was before I went to Vegas.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I got plus money on the under 7.5. So, but it's functionally the same thing, right? Under 8, under 7.5 is basically like I can get. Well, no, theoretically I still have a couple more games to go, but you're already a quarter of the way there, and I think they have to play some half decent teams. So, yeah,
Yeah.
Arizona again this week. That's another one. That line, the line with them
Yeah.
and Mississippi State, that's moved a lot. It's actually Arizona. I saw this at like 7 or so. It's up to 11 already.
Wow.
Like that, and that's the Pac-12 after dark. Well, Pac-ish
Yep.
12 after dark. Um,
Yeah, well, that's going to kick at like 10 o'clock p.m. Starkville time.
it's 11. Yeah, it's 11 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock Starkville time.
Yeah.
That's at 7. That's a late game for you. That's 8 o'clock for you guys.
Yeah,
So
it is.
that's your late game. But yeah, no, I'm excited for that game. That's gonna be a fun game. I'm gonna watch that game, and I'm gonna have. I'm just waiting to see how far this line does go. But I'm gonna wait and just when I finally see that line, I'm gonna bet Arizona on that line. I think, like Arizona, if Arizona is actually good again, like yeah, Mississippi State beat up on Memphis, good for them. But like if this air and again, we talked about it last just with Kansas, right? If this Kansas team believes in itself, Arizona, no reason it can't be the same thing, right? So
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The next one, Liberty, I had under 7.5 wins, and they won. They went 4 overtimes at Southern Miss, and Southern Miss as a team had a QB plus of 8 last season. Now they didn't have anybody qualify because they had like 5 different guys behind center at different points, and they haven't solved anything. They actually had Frank Gore taking snaps out of the Wildcat in overtime. So Liberty under 7.5, I think, is still solid. The only problem I have is, kind of my lucky charm in that whole thing. Charlie Brewer hurt himself, and so they might actually go to somebody who's not going to just like torpedo them for games and games.
yeah,
Oh,
this
sorry.
week
Go ahead.
they're playing. This week they're at UAB, and
Oh
I
boy.
one of the first things I jumped on was UAB minus 6.5. I
Yeah.
absolutely love that.
Wow.
Yeah,
Is that what is that now? I didn't
it's
even.
still 6.5.
Wow. Okay,
Go
that's
go
definitely a play.
go
Yeah.
find that. Yeah, I jumped
Yep.
on that immediately.
Yeah. Northern Illinois under 7 wins. Remember they were just like the luckiest team alive last season, and they kind of stick to their script. I'm hoping it's going to turn soon. They were outgained by Eastern Illinois. They were +2 on turnovers, and still they only won by 7. The clock's a ticking on them. Their time's just about up. Um, Oregon under 8.5 wins.
This is not fun.
Oh, this is a lot of fun if you're me. I'm sorry. Yeah, we're on opposite sides of this. So against Georgia, just some of the highlights. They didn't force a punt, and there were 10 minutes left in the game. They didn't force any turnovers. I don't even think they forced a field goal attempt. I think it was just touchdowns every time Georgia got the ball until basically the fourth quarter. They only had 250 yards of offense until the final drive of the game, where basically both teams just seemed content to let Oregon go 4 yards a clip until the game basically was over. What's interesting, just to take a little detour here for a minute, if I go back to Jordan Travis, and I remember just thinking when they were playing LSU, Florida State was playing LSU on Sunday, this guy looks a lot better. Are my eyes deceiving me? So I went back in 2020. Jordan Travis had a QB plus of 96. Last year, he had a QB plus of 105. Against LSU, he had a QB plus of 134. So why am I bringing that up? because in the first 2 years, his offensive coordinator was Kelly Dillingham, who's now calling plays for the first time at Oregon. Now we get a guy who's been an offensive coordinator before in Alex Atkins. And in this very first game against a good defense, LSU has some issues, but I think there's talent on that defense. 134, way better than any of the past 2 seasons against one of the best defenses he's played in his career.
That's actually a crazy stat.
It's yeah, and it just kind of goes to the whole thing about, I made a long case about their coaching staff and how I don't believe in them. Interesting that after Bo Nix really had a really Bo Nix game without the upside part of Bo Nix. Sunday morning, what was trending on Twitter? Ty Thompson, the backup quarterback for Oregon. Um, this program has lost 4 of its 5 last games with an average margin of losing by 22 points per game. They are in a bad spot, and I'm having a hard time seeing that they're really going to reverse it anytime soon. Not saying they're going to finish last, but you know, I think it's time to kind of hit a reset on just where this team belongs in the college football universe right now.
There's a couple of things on there's a couple of points I'd love to make here that are they're definitely in support of points you've made. When the first future when I was looking at the futures for the Pac-12, at one time functionally Utah, Oregon, and USC were all functionally co-favorites to win or to make the Pac-12 championship game, or I think to win. I think if you go to win conference right now, which there's some interesting bets there too, to be honest. For the Pac-12, Oregon is now plus 450 to win the Pac-12. They're the third largest favorite. Interestingly enough, to win the MAC, Central Michigan's plus 400 still. Toledo's
Hmm,
plus 300. So that's actually Central Michigan's not a bad bet there. But yeah,
yeah.
Oregon has just faded a lot there. I was actually watching a bit of this game. There wasn't a ton of other games on at 3:30. It wasn't really until later on that there was a ton of games that I had stuff on. So I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll throw the Oregon game on. There was one play. It was I think early in the. It was either late in the first or early in the second where Oregon had the ball and they were going down the field a little bit, and suddenly Bo Nix throws a deep pass. And when he second he did, I'm like, this is either a touchdown or an interception. And based on the score, you now know what it was. It was an
Yes.
intercept. It was immediately an interception, and it was because it was the one where it was like deep to the far left side, and basically, the guy like he just the D back turned on it and caught it. Like it was bad, and I knew I'm like this is an touchdown or interception, and it was very clearly like it was just very easy interception, and it's just like yeah, it's not good. It's really not good. And I yeah, maybe Bo Nix isn't the I mean, we've never been particularly confident in Bo Nix. The thing is Oregon will need time to regroup. They'll eventually become good, but yeah, I think this season might be over before it began kind of. I'm really not loving I'm not loving where this is heading. The direction that
Y-
Oregon's heading this year.
Yeah, that 8.5 total, so they could only lose 2 more games. Now they miss USC, but they do have Utah. So yeah, interesting. Um, Counterintuitively, I still like my Penn State under 6.5 conference wins. Um, and I think that we saw everything but the result that we expected in terms of the final score, but the whole process was there in terms of Sean Clifford just being just amazingly bad and inaccurate, except for the times when Purdue just decided not to tackle inexplicably and or just turn the ball over without really being forced to. Um, this is going to be, I think, a Pyrrhic victory in that they're probably going to be stuck with Clifford. They're going to not be stuck. They're going to play Clifford for a lot longer than they should. If you saw Drew Allard get in there and throw some passes, it's like, wow, this is what a quarterback looks like. And just, I mean, night and day difference between what Clifford and what he brings to the table. So that's basically a bet against Sean Clifford, which I am very comfortable with. The ones I'm less confident. Oh, sorry. Did you have any thoughts on our
Uh,
friend Sean Clifford?
Yeah, no, yeah, obviously not particularly a big fan of him. Again, it was so funny. You talk about it, and they had at the end of the game, they had a graphic and they put it up, and it was I can't let me just find it here. It was about Sean Clifford and the last drive he went on, and they said yeah, above and beyond. 'Cause he was 6 for 7
Yes.
on the last drive for 72 passing yards and one TD. And then it also said he'd accounted for 5 total touchdowns tonight. And and it said this was his third game-winning drive. And I'm just like, this is like the most like gerrymandered stats you could like. Okay, yeah, he had to have a game-winning drive. Why did he have to go on a game-winning drive again? Like, this
Yeah.
is the thing, right? And it's like you can't like people in sports, specifically in football, they love this. They love the stats like this, like these gerrymandered stats, basically. Like I remember one time, it was years ago when Matt Stafford was still on the Lions, and they were like, "Oh, when Matt Stafford wasn't playing for when Matt Stafford was injured, I think it was the year after he was injured. When he was injured, the Lions were like 0-8 in games." And it's like, oh, well, what was his record when he was playing when he wasn't injured? It's like, oh, they were like 8-8. And it's just like, but you can't like they weren't even good. They're like 50-50. You're telling me they're like half and half, and then when he's not playing, they're atrocious. Like
Yeah.
this you can't do this stuff. Like it's so like sometimes these football, some of these like some obviously there's a lot of in the football area and football analytics. There's a lot of really smart guys like you and I, and we can name a dozen or so others that understand the stats and how all these fit together and work. But then you get stuff like above and beyond, 6 for 7 on the final on a game-winning drive that shouldn't have needed to happen if they had actually been okay the entire time. Like it's just it's so bad, and it's yeah, let's see. Like, I would not be surprised if we see a different quarterback playing at some point in time later in the season, or maybe not. Maybe they'll. Like, I mean, they're playing Ohio State, but again, watch. Like, I called out. I think looking at the rankings, Penn State was almost had numbers this week. It was close. They almost did. They weren't given them yet, but they were very close to getting ranked this week. But if they win next week, I think they play. Oh, sorry, they play Miami of Ohio, I believe. Um, or no, they play Ohio, not Miami of Ohio. They play the Ohio
Yeah.
Bobcats. If they win that game and a couple other teams lose, watch Penn State will be ranked for the Ohio State game, in which they'll lose by like 40
Yeah.
or something. So watch out for that.
Well, in fairness, and I posted this on Twitter. Right now, I don't know if I'd have them top 25. If they had Drew Alar, I would probably put him in that, around 20, just because, you know, there's actually a good amount of talent on that roster. Um, the other thing is, I think that 5 touchdowns graphic is wrong. I counted 6. If you got to include that pick 6 in there, right? He's responsible for that too.
That's right. Yes, the pick six.
I mean, that was kind of part of the game plan that you and I had drawn up going into that game.
Yeah, pick sixes should count as both an interception and a touchdown pass.
Yes. Um, all right, so a couple of future bets that I'm not so happy about. Purdue over 7 wins. Can they do it? Yeah, I'm just really not thrilled that they still have the red zone problems that they had last year. They move the ball great. They need to figure out how to run the ball. Especially they have what was that running back's name? His name was like King or something like that. Just a great name for it. Yeah, King Doru. Don't know how you don't run that guy more. And then a couple of the conference champion, actually both of the ones I had in the ACC, they're going in the trash bin. Louisville, they made Garrett Schrader look like Dan Marino in his prime. I mean, and Garrett Schrader's terrible. And North Carolina gives up 6 touchdowns in 12 minutes to App State. Um, yeah, big no to both.
Louisville is really concerning. Like they're getting 6.5 on Friday night against
Against UC.
against Central Florida.
Yeah,
That's a little tempting. I don't know. I mean, they were really bad. The question is, why were they really bad? The thing is, like, again, when you see something like that, like, if it maybe Syracuse isn't bad this year. Apparently, some people really like the Syracuse running back. So, but again, like Malik Cunningham was really bad. I bet him to win the Heisman, and so I'm not really happy about that one. But again, like Louisville could maybe come back up and do some stuff. We'll have to see. Like they could. I don't know. That 6.5 is tempting. If that was a 7, I'd take it. 6.5 is a little iffy, but I'd probably take a 7 though. We'll have to see. But yeah, that was really not a good showing there against thing. North Carolina though was interesting though, and that was there was and I'm so mad at them too because they did the stupidest play ever because when basically App State went for 2, which was correct, that was the correct play to do.
hmm
Then they don't get the 2-point conversion, so they go for the onside kick, which they have to do because I think there was like a minute left or so. And then North Carolina gets the ball on the on the onside kick, and then they run it for a touchdown, which is the one thing. If there was
Yeah,
one thing you don't do, it's that. Because
yeah,
then they immediately give the ball back to App State, and App State's only down 8, which is a touchdown and a 2 point. Like, that was so insane. I was screaming at my screen, like, why would you do that? That was like, you like, how does the coach not tell has how has the coach not told them, or how do these people lack game awareness that much that they don't realize that if they take a knee there, the game's over, it's done.
yeah,
You go to you're it's done. You go to the locker room. Then they had to play another whole, like, a long period of game because then App State got another touchdown, and then, like, that was really bad. I cannot believe that that guy didn't just take a knee there. Like, that game was over, it was done. If he went down with that ball, the game was done.
yeah. It just well, not just that. It's like you've given up 5 touchdowns like in 11 minutes here. You got to know that if you're giving him the ball back, you can't like your chances of keeping him out of the end zone.
Yeah, like, you were leading by a point. You're like, oh, we got up by 8. There's no way they could, like, if I score, we'll be lead by 8. They can't. There's no way they can get 8. Oh wait, they could do a 2 point. Oh well, they're not gonna do that. Like, no,
Yeah.
of course they can. Like, your defense can't stop anything. Like, that game was so, like, I that game was one of the only games on in the noon window. And, like, literally, I saw App State run the same play, which was like sweep zone. Like, they just swept the ball out to the left side and just ran it. I could give you, like, if I had the footage of the entire game, I could cut at least 8 plays, 8 of them doing 8 times they did that for at least 20 yards. Like, it was absolutely ridiculous. Like, there's at least 8 times they just ran the ball to the left side of the field and they got like 20 yards out of it. It was absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, this North Carolina team is like, they're gonna really miss Sam Howell. And then, like, you see some of the North Carolina touchdowns. It's like, oh, here's a guy wide open, no one's covering for 20 yards. He just runs it into the end zone. Like, it was, like, I really worry about North Carolina this season. I'm not sure when we get a game that we can bet. I think they're playing this week, or they're playing a D2 team, or I don't
They're
know.
at
But
Georgia
yeah,
State. This was that stupid back-to-back scheduling that they did at App State and at Georgia State back-to-back.
is that? But we don't really trust Georgia State, do we?
I don't know. I don't trust either of these. It's only 9.5 points. I mean, Georgia State's not
That's
nearly as
it.
good as App State. Yeah. Actually, no, it's 7.5. It opened at 9.5.
See, that's where you can, like, maybe bet North Carolina, but okay, they're gonna have to play other teams that are good teams. Like, they don't just get to keep playing Sunbelt teams. Like, at some point they're gonna play a team with an actual defense, and then they're done. So
Yeah, true. Yeah. Okay. Back to the dashboard. The next window, I've just called hot seat instead of the head coach hot seat, and you'll see why in a second. First of all, of course, is our buddy Scott Frost. As you noted, he did himself no favors being tied with South Dakota, I think it was,
yes.
at halftime. And it's all fun and games here, but Nebraska plays Georgia Southern this week, and that was one of my favorite bets was Georgia Southern under 4. So if he loses that one, this is becoming a lot less comedic as it relates to Scott Frost. The smiles are going to stop real quick, and I'm going to be actually outraged that they haven't fired this idiot yet.
Well,
Um,
they'll
yes.
probably, because this is, I think, they play a bunch of bad teams for like the first 4 weeks, and then they play someone good. I think Oklahoma. That's right. I think Oklahoma's coming up in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
this could get like, that could get really out of hand. Like, this is
Yep.
not going to be like oh, Nebraska always loses this game by a score. They're going to lose by like 40. So, like, watch out for that. Like, when that spread goes live, just immediately bet that spread.
Yep. Yep. Number two, he was kind of quiet and just overwhelmed by all the noise around Scott Frost, and he really got his publicity last night. Jeff Collins. Wow, what a horrible, horrible effort last night. It's just I don't want to say he didn't want to win. I just don't know if he knows what he's doing half the time out there. Just some of the stuff that they were doing was just baffling. Georgia Tech, that is. Just I don't know. Any thoughts on Georgia Tech or what we saw on the Georgia Tech side last night?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem to be working. The thing of it was, at times they were able to effectively run plays. Like, they were able to do stuff, but then you just have these bad plays in which just everything gets erased. Like, you'll run for 6 yards on first down, and then, like, second down, whatever, and then third down you'll get like a second down, and there'll be a sack for 10 yards, and then you're like, oh, cool, it's like third and 22 now, and you're like, but
Hmm.
we did good on the first play. Why is it third and 22 now? And they did not do themselves any favors. And yeah, the talent isn't there. And again, if Clemson isn't good, like, the thing is, again, yeah, you lost to Clemson, and people are gonna be like, oh, it's Clemson, whatever. But I'm not particularly high in Clemson after last night. but again, now we're looking down the road. Like, what happens when they play Syracuse or apparently Louisville? Like, what happens when they play the worst in the ACC and they lose by 30 points? Are they going to be as happy? Like, that's when the real outrage is going to come.
Yeah. I think the outrage has already peaked. I think now they're just in like, just please, just end this.
Could
I can't imagine they have
had
any
had that been
support.
somewhat different, what would the score have been? Could they have won that game last night?
No, that's the same result, even if they're playing, literally Clemson or Georgia State.
No, no. I'm saying if it's a different head coach, could they have
Oh, sorry.
if it's a different head coach at Georgia State or Georgia Tech, could they like they definitely could have kept it within a score.
Yeah, yeah, with just how bad Clemson was. Yeah, I mean they
Like that
kept
was
it close for a
horrible for
while until they really just
they were horrible for
all this.
3 quarters. It was like 3 full quarters. Like
Yeah,
it was really bad.
yeah. This and just speaking of that, just the fact that Clemson gets such a freebie from the ACC office. It's like, yeah, one of your pod opponents is going to be Georgia Tech. They stink. They're probably always going to stink, and you're going to get to go to Atlanta, like the best place to recruit that whole conference footprint. Every other year. It's just what a gift to Clemson that's one of their pod of partners. Just ugh. Okay. And the last name in the hot seat panel is Ivan Jasper. Who is Ivan Jasper and why am I bringing him up? Ivan Jasper is the quarterback coach for Navy. Navy scored 7 points and had 319 yards, hosting Delaware. Um, this is fascinating because Navy was horrible on offense. They were actually pretty good on defense. They lost only 14-7. Um, it was about a year ago when Navy actually fired then offensive coordinator Ivan Jasper. I don't know if you remember this story. And the following day, I guess Ken Nui Matalolo threatened to quit, and so they brought back Mr. Jasper as quarterback coach. And I don't really hope for him to lose his job, but it would be amazing to see the same program fire the same guy twice within 2 seasons.
That would be pretty funny. I Why does Navy have a quarterback coach? Like, I mean, I guess you have to, but like,
Yeah, it's kind of like having a tight end coach. It's like you do some stuff, it's just not, what the other guys do.
yeah, I mean, it's Delaware. Like, this is not like they lost to Delaware. This is really bad. Like, I can't like. There's a reason why Navy didn't make a bowl last year, and this is why. What's Navy? Does Navy doesn't isn't there a spread on a Navy game this week? Yeah, they're only +6. They're +6 at Memphis.
Oh boy.
That seems like that's a soft line. Well, but their
Yeah,
defense
that
could be good though.
yeah, well, yeah, but man, giving up, only getting 7 against Delaware. The other thing too is I didn't see the game. Supposedly, or not supposedly, they've changed the rule about cut blocks, and I don't know if maybe they've kind of just not reacted to that well and kind of just not coached properly. Um, don't know, but just yeah,
Yeah.
not promising for them. All right, so the next window in the dashboard, I just call Narduzzi because it's kind of a staging area for the hot seat panel. And it's also just where we can comment on just really, really horrible stuff that we see. Um, did you see Friday night the Colorado hosting TCU game?
Yeah, I saw bits. I saw
Uh,
a large part of the end of that game. Yeah.
it was just a masterclass in how to just get everybody upset. It was so horrible. So Carl Durrell, I had high hopes for you, and no more, man. Um, they started Brendan Lewis, who was shaky last year. They just had the same kind of play calling with him that we saw with Clemson with DJU, just super timid, didn't trust him to do anything. Um, he was ineffective, although somehow Colorado, got to score a field goal on the first possession. Um, they switched to JT Shrout, who basically moves the ball, and they call plays, like regular plays, and Shrout does his stuff. And then inexplicably, they put Lewis back in, even though he hadn't done anything, and just the crowd totally turned on everybody. It was embarrassing just how heartily they were booing. I don't know who, if they're booing, Lewis or the coaches or whatever. And then of course they go 3 and out, and just it becomes just outright hostile at that point. Um, then the next possession, 6 play drive, and they punt again, and it just got just horrible. Then they put Shrout back in, and they're better. Still, they clearly lost. There's no better way just to just antagonize the fans. I mean, Andy Avalos, we'll talk about him coming up shortly. He did the right thing when his starting starter didn't have it. He took him out, and that was that. And maybe it's easier because he's on the road. Just for some comparison about the difference in the quarterback play, QB plus for the game, JT Shrout was 100, Lewis was a 35. I just don't get putting Lewis back in and just that guy's confidence is probably shot for the rest of the season, if not his college career. It was just horrible, horrible coaching. Just I've often said that just being out coached, just a lot of it's just doing stupid things, and this was just a great example of that. Next, in the Narduzzi panel, Andy Avalos, my guy. You are a great defensive coordinator. You are a really handsome guy. You will probably never hurt for ever having a job, but you are 7-6 at a program that does not go 7-6. You've given up 61 points in your last two games. Um, you got just dump trucked by Oregon State, and it wasn't even as close as the 17 points might make it out to be. Um, Not working out, man. And this is why established programs have to hire established coaches. What are they waiting for now? What's the move if you're Boise State? Do you fire a guy into a second season and just make it look like you are not a place where an established coach will go? Do you give him time when you kind of know it's not going to work out? This is where USC found itself with Clay Helton.
Well, and this is the thing, right? Because now when you're looking at it, recruiting it's so important there right at the end of the season and the transfer portal, right? Do you like the longer you wait for this guy, the less lead time you're going to have when you get the new guy in there to be able to like start getting used to it, right? Like you don't like if you fire this guy at the end of the season, then your new guy is not going to have any time to recruit. And you're basically just tanking the entire next season. So like if you get to like if you fire him now, maybe the new guy can be like in some position to succeed when he gets in there and say like November or something, right? So like yeah, it's not particularly good. But the thing is like if they like I think they'll probably beat New Mexico this week, but then like well one what if they don't? But then also like they're not like they have to play a lot of Mountain West teams. Like I
Yeah.
don't like I think they could be in really big trouble in a lot of these games coming up very soon.
And more of the gimmies in the West or in the Mountain West or in the Western Division than the Mountain Division. Mountain's pretty tough. Um, yeah, that's going to be interesting to watch. It's not great, but that could really just go to a bad spot pretty quickly, just program wise, and just, to that spot where you have like angry home teams, as we saw in Colorado. Um, just have to mention next point here into the Narduzzi panel, and we'll get to this game later. But 21 punts in South Dakota State at Iowa. That's just mastery. You know, I think one of the secrets to Kirk Ferentz having a sneaky great one-loss record is, like we just saw, his teams are in midseason form in week one. That was just classic Iowa. They're not going to be any better than we just saw, and it's only week one. And finally, an update on our guy Diego Pavia, the quarterback from New Mexico State. He actually went 2 for 5 for 10 yards at Minnesota, a QB plus of -26 for the game, which was somehow much better than what we saw against Nevada.
Classic. Um, what I'll actually do is I actually would love to institute an actually like a negative Narduzzi panel. So there's something I want to call out. Kind of, I think we're going to talk a bit about that later. But I really want to tip my hat to the Florida's new head coach Billy Napier. Um, they actually like I watched a lot of that game. They had some really good play calling. One I particularly want to highlight is late in the game. Um, Utah was up 26-22. Florida was marching down the field with basically a minute and 54 left on 3rd and 4 on the Utah 28. Now remember they need to get a touchdown. A field goal they'll still be down if they get a field goal. So they need a touchdown. 3rd and 4. They have Anthony Richardson run. Now, this is something that a lot of the analytics people love. A lot of the analytics people love third down running because basically when you run on third down, you've basically decided you're going for it on fourth down.
Yep.
And this is something that you would not have seen on with Dan Mullen. You would have not have seen this, and it was hilarious because I was watching the Notre Dame Ohio State game at the same time, and Dan Mullen was on the panel for that game because I was covered by ESPN, and I was just shouting at the TV like, "Oh, would you have done that, Dan Mullen?" Like this is the thing because it's beautiful. The Florida now has a really good analytics minded head coach because they did third and four the third down run, and then again then you hand it off to Anthony Richardson on fourth and two. He gets 9 yards. Couple plays later he runs it in for the touchdown later with a minute and a half left. Then of course they get the game sealing interception to win the game. But that's smart. That's like again, like in college football, you it's hit and miss with a lot of the coaching and how analytically minded they are. But like, and we've Billy Napier's focus from what I've heard, he's focused a lot on the recruiting trail. But you have now a sound analytical head coach at Florida, one of the I mean, it is one of the best programs in the SEC, probably right up there with Bama and Georgia. Like that's like watch out for this team in the future. I think Anthony Richardson needs a little bit more. Like that was a great running performance. Love to see him pass the ball a little bit better. But like again, but this is Billy Napier's first year. Like watch out longer term. This Florida team could be very good in the near future. So watch out for that.
I am a big believer in Billy Napier. Like I said, I almost wore my Louisiana Cajuns T-shirt that I bought in 2019 because I had that season win total over, which hit very early in that season, and big believer in him. Don't disagree with anything you said, but just go to the other side of the coin, the whole soft skills thing. You'll appreciate this since you're a Florida guy, and I'm sure you remember Will Muschamp just yells at anybody and everybody that he can yell at,
Yep.
and just Napier is just so composed the whole time. It's just like he's waiting to be, he's waiting at a bakery just to have his number called. He doesn't get ruffled. They got the right guy. I also love, since we brought this up, this kind of jars loose a memory of the off season. So I was listening to an SEC podcast, and one of the guys said Billy Napier would be an absolute desire hire for Florida. I thought, well, I don't know if I'd agree with, and this is before they had hired him, but when they were kicking around names, I thought I don't agree with that. And the same guy then picked him to go 10-2 this year. So it just means more, I guess, right? That's what they say, and it just means more opinions.
Hmm. Yeah, no, yeah, that's the thing. I'm really happy with that. And yeah, when I saw that third and four run, because again, you're at the 28, you're down a lot. Most coaches would probably throw the ball there. When I saw that run, I was like, oh yes, like that was a moment for me. I'm like, this is really good. I'm really happy with this. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing this Florida team, and they like mark your calendars there. The largest outdoor cocktail party coming up in a couple of weeks there, Florida, Georgia. That could be a very interesting game. I'm definitely like I think we might be seeing a couple of Florida primetime games this year. So we're
Yeah.
watch out for that.
Yep. No, that was a fun game to watch. Okay, last window on the executive dashboard are I've just got my rankings for the G5 New Year's Bowl bid uh, berth. And this is not a G5 ranking of G5 teams. This is who I think has the best path to get that bowl bid. I've had Cincinnati first, Air Force second, and Fresno State third, both in the Mountain West, and then UAB fourth. I've made cases for the first three. We didn't really talk about UAB in the preseason. I referred to them when I talked about the UTEP case, and I said, look, UAB clearly has the biggest, the best returning talent. It was just, my proclivity for UTEP was more about UAB losing the great Bill Clark. UAB started strong. Conference USA is a weaker of the G5 conferences, but on November 19th, they play AL at LSU. And that could be just the one ticket puncher that really gets them. If they go undefeated and they have that winning at LSU that late in the season, that could get them to that, the New Year's Bowl bid.
Yeah, I'm excited. You mentioned Fresno State. The other the other Pac-12-ish after dark game is well actually there's a couple of them, but the other one is Oregon State at Fresno State. or actually no, maybe it's the other way. I can't remember, but it's Oregon State, Fresno State. Basically, that game is even. It's Oregon State -1. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that game. Like Oregon State was good against Boise, but if we think Boise's kind of bad, like Fresno State was pretty good last year. I don't know. What do you think about that game?
Yeah, this is weird. I don't know if there's a little bit where Fresno might be caught looking ahead to USC.
Mm,
They play. I don't know. I don't know. G5s aren't going to overlook any Power Five schools usually, but they're, how often do they have them scheduled back to back like that? Against a winnable team, does Fresno State think they're better than Oregon State? Do they think that they can take it for granted? I don't know. Tedford's a really good coach. I don't know if he'll let that happen. I think that Fresno has the better quarterback. They probably have a better defense as a unit, even though there's probably better individual talent, probably in some spots in Oregon State, who just hasn't put it together yet as a group. Tedford's a more accomplished coach. He's proven more. I couldn't play that. That's a sneaky, really, really good game to watch. Is that an after dark game you said?
yeah,
Cool.
10:30, 10:30 Eastern,
Nice.
7:30 for you guys. So
Oh, so that goes basically up against the Arizona hosting Mississippi State
yeah,
game.
there's a lot of really good late games. There's well, UTEP is 14-point favorite against New Mexico State. We could finally get that first win for them. Then we got Baylor. We got Baylor, BYU, Oregon State, Fresno State, and the Mississippi State, Arizona. It's three amazing games in that late window. I think you're because there was when there was talks about the new media deals. I think they're starting to schedule a lot better games in that late window because I think they're realizing that there are degenerate gamblers that don't mind staying up past midnight on a Saturday to
Yeah.
watch random games, and I think they're trying to exploit that. It's also funny that at 8 o'clock Hawaii plays Michigan, and Hawaii is 51-point underdogs.
Oof.
Yeah, I
I've act, I've actually read that the next Pac-12 television deal is going to mean even more of those late starts for them. That's basically the only way they're going to get anywhere near the peak value of their potential contract value
which is
is
great.
just
I'd love a fourth window in college football to open up for the time slots. It's nice to have
yeah.
that, especially if you do that. Like the Friday one has sneakily been actually like there was never really a late Friday game, but now we're getting Boise, New Mexico, which is not particularly good. But if you could squeeze in a couple of late Friday games and then also late Saturday games, that'd be really nice to have.
Yeah, I would push back a little bit on that. I think like because of what I've put the picture I've painted of Boise, you're kind of getting where every game's like almost an anxiety game, and it's like it'll be interesting as long as the game's not out of hand for Boise at New Mexico State or at New Mexico. Okay, so that's the dashboard. So after the dashboard, we're going to go into a deeper dive here, and the topic this week for the deeper dive is looking for the fraudulent early season blowout. My background in this is I remember way back when I noticed with one team in particular, just an example of, they were blowing out teams, but it didn't really look like it. And I've kind of learned from it. So the earliest that I can remember this being a case is 20 years ago, the 2002 Washington team. They were preseason number 11. They lost their first game of the season by 2 at Michigan, who was highly ranked. They lost it on they had a crazy 12 men on the field penalty, like when Michigan was going for a Hail Mary, then Michigan got a field goal instead. And crazy, crazy finish. Washington should have won that game. So they stayed number 11 after that game. Then they had 3 walkovers, all at home. They beat San Jose State 34-10. They beat Wyoming by 31. They beat Idaho by 14, but they barely ran the ball in these games. They ran for 4.1 an attempt against San Jose State, 3.1 versus Wyoming, and under 3 an attempt versus Idaho. Idaho was still FBS back in these days. So they had very impressive, scores, but they were not dominating much lesser teams. And meanwhile, South in the conference, Jeff Tedford was turning around a really bad Cal program in his first year. So in their first real tough game since the Michigan game, they actually lost to Cal, who was still unranked at that point, 34-27, and they only had 42 yards and 1.5 yards per attempt in that game, which really didn't surprise me. I remember I had Cal in that game, just thinking, yeah, this Washington team is very, very vulnerable. Something that's a little more in the modern era. People might remember this. 2012, USC was coming off a very good 2011 season. They finished in the top five, and so they're preseason number one. Their first game of that season, they won 49-10 against Hawaii, but they only ran for 81 yards, 3.5 per attempt. And it was, again, great score, but just very physically unimpressive. And that just showed that they had a bunch of problems being physical. And so they lost. They actually went 6-7 that year. They lost at Stanford, at Arizona, home against Oregon, home against Notre Dame, and then against Georgia Tech in a bowl. That wasn't all their losses, but in those losses, they were unable to run. They got less than 4 yards per attempt. Um, so again, there's instances of early signs where a team is winning big on the scoreboard, but not overwhelming someone. You and I were messaging last night about the Clemson game, saying this is so unimpressive that they can't even qualify. At the end, the score kind of got out of hand, and I think that's a great example too. I think Clemson ran for like less than 3 yards per attempt last night,
Let
but
me
they won
just
by
call
31 points.
Let me just call that up now. No, yeah, the thing of it was because I had the spread, the spread, last spread in that game was 24 and a half, and until they decided to randomly get a touchdown at the end of the game, they were not covering that for the entirety of the game. Yeah, they ran for 119 yards against Georgia Tech,
Yeah, on
and they
40
passed
rushes.
for 259 yards. 211 of those, 210 of those were for DJ. He had one passing touchdown, and Cade Klubnik, who came in at the end, he was 4 for 6 for 49 yards, 8.2 per thing, and he had the same amount of passing touchdowns as DJ, who had been in there for the entire game. So
Yeah,
kind of nuts that was. But yeah, only 3 yards an attempt for Clemson against a Georgia Tech team that they should have. And again, like they actually had some decent rushing plays too, but they just couldn't. They couldn't put it away.
yeah. So, and you mentioned that they have an easy schedule coming up, but let's definitely keep an eye out for when they're going to play. Any team that has something resembling a defense, and they could be in a bad spot really quick.
Wake Forest. I clicked on that back panel there. Wake Forest 9/24, so October 24th here on ESPN. NC State on October 1st.
Yep.
So they
And
have NC
even,
State.
you know what? And this is surprising because they actually were pretty bad last week at Boston College. I think Boston College is gonna be kind of forgotten here, but they still have Jeff Hafley as head coach, and he's a good defensive coordinator or defensive whatever defensive mind. That could be a lot more than they're bargaining for, and it's at Boston College. Um, so, anyways, so we brought up Clemson. Another one that I saw this week that really just stood out in the same way. Texas A&M beat San Houston State 31-0. They only ran for 20. They ran 25 times and only 2.6 per attempt. What else is even more crazy is they had three touchdown passes of 66 yards, 63 yards, and 43 yards, which is great, but you know, not unlike what we saw at sometimes towards the end of last night in that Clemson game. It's just a matter of just out athleting and not really out footballing anybody. So if you take out those three touchdown passes on all the other Texas A&M pass attempts, they attempted 28 passes for only 192 yards and they had two interceptions, a QB plus of 45, which would have put you last among all qualifiers last year. And this is against Sam Houston State. Now, Sam Houston State is going to get an invite to Conference USA within a year or two, but this is a problem. And to me, this isn't out of nowhere. When we talked about A&M in the preseason, I made the point that they lost a really, really good offensive line coach, Josh Henson, to USC, and they replaced him with Steve Adazio, who worked some real magic up in Colorado State. Uh, Not sure what he did or didn't do against Sam Houston State, but they returned a lot of talent. They returned a good running back. That is a problem. The other problem too is that's not a quarterback friendly system that Jimbo runs. And they named Haynes King starter, which I think probably makes sense. But we need to remember he missed almost all of last season too. So it's even though it's his 3rd year in the program, it's really his 2nd year kind of taking snaps in this crazy system. So I think they've got some problems.
Yeah. So just a couple points on that too. So one, getting back to those 3 touchdown passes of 66, 63, and 43 yards. When you're playing a D2 team, that's like, oh, the cornerback fell down. Like
Yeah.
it's like, oh, they jumped up for the ball, the guy fell, and then you caught
Yeah.
the ball, the guy was on the ground, you just run it in, right? That's like
Yeah.
a DB fell down or a blown coverage somewhere, some guy was just wide open and running an open field. That happens. And again, we saw that last week with App State versus North Carolina. It can happen, but if a lot of your offense is generated by that, if that happens 3 times in a game, and that's one of the reasons why that scoreline looks so impressive, that's concerning. That is a very concerning thing. And okay, yes, they actually, and I'm going to bring this up now. They're playing App State this week, so maybe they can have some more blown coverages. But you're in the SEC. Do you think that's going to happen against Alabama? Do you think Alabama's going to let you get like 3 touchdown passes of over 40 yards? Do you think Alabama's going to let you do that? Do you think
No.
Arkansas is going to let you do that? Like, no, that's not going to happen, right? And
Yeah.
like, you're not going to be able to beat an overmatched cornerback or safety or something with against like those like, from an SEC defense. So no, that's not happening. And this is the thing. So their defense, you mentioned on offense, their rushing was bad, and that's definitely true. On defense, they let 4 yards a rush against Sam Houston, which is again a D2 team. You're allowing 4 yards a rush. App State was 43 for 288 yards, 6.7 yards a rush against North Carolina. So if your defense is allowing a D2 team 4 yards a rush, and you're having an App State team which actually is really good at rushing, and like, what is that? Where's that line go? Where's that tomorrow? Like, I mean, not tomorrow. What happens on Saturday when you're
Yeah.
playing an actually D1 team with D1 like linemen and running backs? Like, that's dangerous. That's a problem. And one of my first bets that I made this weekend, I saw App State plus 17 and a half. Took that and the money line. It's actually up to 18 and a half. Might dip back into that again if that keeps going up higher. If we get to like 20 or something. Because there's a lot of after 18 and a half, there's a bunch of dead points there. But like, yeah, no, like I love apps. Like, I don't think Texas A&M is going to be able to cover that 18 and a half, especially not if App State can just run all over them.
I agree. And this might be one to tag for that BBMI, the brand-based market inertia,
Hmm.
where I don't know where did they land in the AP poll? Like they're like 6th or 7th right now.
Yeah, they're like six, I think. They're in the top 10. Like,
I
they
don't know
didn't
how.
move.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, they're six in AP, six in college. They no change.
I
Actually,
don't
they
see.
gained one spot and they gained one spot in the coaches poll.
Oh, okay, well that's probably because Oregon or no, who Utah lost.
No, Notre Dame actually lost.
Oh,
They
sorry. Yeah, yeah,
gained,
yeah. I
which is
don't know how. Go ahead.
yeah, it's an interesting point. I saw we make it on Twitter, but it's insane that Notre Dame, which was I think the number well by a coaches poll, they were the fifth ranked team. They were 16 and a half, 17 point dogs against Ohio State. They cover that score. They cover that, and yet they fall. Like, what more do you want from them? Like, at what point you're like, this is where they're supposed to be ranked? Like, did they if they like it's stupid that like what's the point in these rankings if like if they lose if a team loses a game you just drop them points like clearly like okay fine like they covered the spread though they beat expectations like theoretically they should actually move up theoretically they probably wouldn't because obviously the next one is Georgia but like you shouldn't just drop them 4 slots just because they covered the spread against the number 2 team like that's just a stupid people who make rankings are dumb thing but yeah.
Well, and yeah, to that point, based on what you saw on Saturday, you know, do you think? Are you convinced that Texas A&M is better than Notre Dame?
No.
Not even close. I don't think it's really close between these two. More to the point, um, at the end of last season, who's better between these two? It was Notre Dame. Texas A&M lost 4 games last season.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, yeah, they upgraded a quarterback, but that's only go so far. And like I said, that's not a plug and play system. Um, yeah, yeah, the early season polls are so frustrating. So
One more I like to add to kind of fraudulent blowouts was Wisconsin. So they also played a D2 team and they also won in a shutout. But Wisconsin, so yeah, well Texas A&M had 3 touchdown passes of over 40 yards. Wisconsin had a 100-yard interception return. So it was 3rd and 9 for Illinois State from the Wisconsin 9 And then basically at that point they had gone on a 71-yard drive. This was actually the third drive of the game, Illinois State's second drive. So this is against Wisconsin's defensive starters. Illinois State goes on a 71-yard drive against you, and then you get a 100-yard interception return. Which again, this is exactly what we said before. This is now okay, cool. The guy got the pick, he ran it out, and then obviously the offense wasn't in position, and like someone, maybe the quarterback, or like again, they're trying to cover a interception return. They blow the coverage, cool. You're gone for 100 yards, right? But like
Hmm.
that's insane that was that, like if not that would have been a score basically. So that's crazy that was part baked into that score as well. Then they had a 96-yard touchdown run, which again, great. I actually saw a clip of that. ESPN decided, well, not ESPN, well, ESPN for you guys, TSN for us, but then we get the ESPN feed. They showed a highlight clip of it. Yeah, he got up like 10, he got like 10 yards into it. Then like he blew past the safety, had a blown tackle or something. He runs it for 96 yards. Yeah, sounds like a great play, but this is against a D2 team.
Yeah.
Like this just pads that score line. And again, they had a 74-yard pass in that game to the Illinois State 19. Now they punched it in a couple plays later, but again, these are massive chunk plays. Now again, you could do that against the D2 team, but it pads that stat line, and if you're relying against that, that could be a problem. Now this week they actually play Washington State. Now Washington State actually did struggle to put away Idaho last week. Actually struggled a lot, especially in the early game, but then they came on in the late game. But 17.5 points versus Wisconsin, and I believe they are Washington. They're in Wisconsin, I believe.
Yeah, it's at Wisconsin.
It's
Yeah.
at Wisconsin, but like I can't. I think it's actually down to 17 now. But yeah, give me Washington State. I like this team last year. I get the ability to fade. I get the ability to fade Wisconsin. I get the ability to fade Grant Mertz. I'll take that any day. With a D1 team, I'll take that.
You took a long time to get to the Graham Mertz part of this whole equation too.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like he's still not particularly good. I had originally thought I mean, we'll have to see. I thought he might eventually play himself into getting drafted to the NFL somehow. There's still that could still happen, but we'll have to see. But I don't know. I don't love this. I don't like this Wisconsin team. Give me 17.5 points all day.
This is interesting too. If you take out and again, you can't undo the 96-yard TD run. They have that. Okay. But if
Hmm.
we set that aside against Illinois State, all of the rushes went for less than 3.5 yards per carry. Wisconsin, we're talking about. This isn't Illinois. This isn't like Rutgers. This isn't some team that just passes the ball and doesn't know how to run. That's their identity. And so if you throw out one play, they ran for less than 3.5 yards a carry. Yeah. I remember I was making a little bit of a case saying this could be interesting for Jake Dickert against Wisconsin. Um, that 17.5 could be enticing. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
interesting.
it is. The thing of it is like because this is the thing, right? Because technically, the crazy thing about it is Wisconsin covered the spread. The spread was like 30, like 35 and a half, and they won at 38-0. So they covered the spread. People were like, yeah, great. But like that was not a particularly painless spread covering. Like when you
Yeah.
need a 100-yard interception return and a 96-yard touchdown run, and like if you don't have those, that you don't cover the spread against Illinois State. Not great. Not a
Yeah.
great thing.
Yep.
And then kind of the last one we kind of touched on it a little bit ago. Iowa. You mentioned that there was 21 punts in that game, which is again crazy. The entire game was insane. So in terms of the stat line, one QB was 10 for 26 for 87 yards. The other QB was 11 for 25 for 109 yards and the interception. Which one do you think was the Iowa QB, and which one was the Iowa State QB? Or no, the what is it? South Dakota State QB. Which one was which?
I literally, is there a difference? I mean,
Hilariously enough, Spencer Petraeus, the Iowa quarterback, that was the one with the interception.
okay, that's a little surprising because like that's one thing they'll do is just like he's pretty good about throwing the ball in the dirt,
Yeah,
but couldn't even execute that this game.
yeah. Like I
Wow.
mean, he had one extra completion for
Oh,
basically 20 more yards, and then but had an interception. So like again, those are basically even. I wouldn't say one is better than the other one from that, which is insane. So again, the score line, the final score was Iowa won 7-3, which again that looks normal for a game from 1956, which is roughly what we expect from Iowa in 2022. But it's extremely deceptive because it wasn't a touchdown to a field goal. Both teams got a field goal, and Iowa got two safeties. So that's why the scoreline looks fine at 7-3, but it was basically two safeties and a field goal to a field goal, which is just insane. I like this week. Iowa State is visiting Iowa, which is not really visiting because it's the same state. But for some reason, they're letting me bet Iowa State plus 3.5 and one plus 160 on the money line. I don't know why they're letting me do this. But yeah, I'm gonna keep betting that. I mean, it's probably a trap, but like I don't care. Like out of just like I can't. I literally cannot not bet that. Like I don't care. I have zero faith in this Iowa team. I don't know why they're favorites in this game. This is really bad. Like words cannot describe how bad that is. Like it's really bad.
Yeah. The true gem of that is I think the total's about 40, which is just awesome.
40 in a college football game. Like I know Iowa State is rebuilding, and I guess that means that they probably aren't good. But like and you probably theoretically, I guess Iowa's offense can only improve from here theoretically. But
Mhm.
like man, like you can't like it was a D2 team. Like what are you doing? Like you don't even
Yeah.
score a touchdown against a D2 team. Like we said about this, like somehow this Iowa team made they somehow made the Big Ten conference championship last year. We're like, this is insanely fraudulent. They got destroyed, but like this is like new levels of fraudulent. Like this is now finally like, okay, yeah, we actually suck. We're gonna suck this year now. Like we were okay last year and we got lucky on a couple of teams, and again they got lucky against Nebraska. Again, we talk about Nebraska. They got lucky against Nebraska there in the final game of the season to even make the championship. But like it's just like you have to start fading this team. Like they're giving you 3.5 points. It's probably a trap, but like Iowa State could just crush them. Like this could just be really bad. Like I don't know. I've got to take the points in the money line on that one.
Yeah. I Is it crazy to say can they score over 3 points?
Well, what actually? You know what? That's an interesting. What is the team total? What's the team total? Iowa over 23.
Yeah, 23-20. Like I said, the total. Yeah, so
It's
geez.
actually they have Iowa over 23.5, and they have Iowa State over 16.5, but over 16.5 shade of the minus 135. But um
Boy.
that yeah, that seems
Oh,
wait, that's weird. So how can they have like a that's an 8 point difference, but the spread is 3.5.
yeah, I
They
guess
don't even
something.
believe it. They're like, yeah, whatever. It's probably wrong.
Just hope nobody puts the two together.
That's probably there's value on one of those. I just don't know which one it is. But
Yep.
I'll just take the points because this could be like, can they win this game 3-0? Like, is that I don't even know that
Yeah.
I
Just
don't know. I like no. I refuse to not bet against this Iowa team.
yeah. I can't argue with you on that one. Okay. Get to some week 2 games. Uh, First one I've got here that I want to talk about: Alabama at Texas. Alabama opened at I don't know if they opened at 18, but they're given 20 now. Um, I I I can't make any case for Texas here. I just can't.
Sark apparently at a press conference said that he said at the press conference, "This game is not a judge of where we are as a program."
Yeah.
Alabama spread. I don't like. I don't like if you say that. I don't care what else you say. Like you could say I'm just kidding. Like no, it's done. Alabama spread. I don't care. Like this is gonna be. This has the markings of we are like that is Sark saying we are gonna get crushed and there's nothing we can do about it. And like yeah, this could be really bad. I think this is like but again, this is what Alabama does, right? They just shred teams. And this is the thing. This isn't like I think that they're just going to shred this team. Like Alabama spread, Alabama first half spread is I think 11.5 minus 102 minus 105. That's not bad at all.
Wow. Yeah.
Um, no, and I like Bryce Young over 2.5 passing touchdowns or whatever that line comes out as. Like they're just going to shred this Texas defense.
Yep.
And maybe they
I
can stop Bijan. Like they're gonna be like they'll they're going to keep running Bijan Robinson and stuff, but like they're going to be better on passing. Like they're going to be able to shut down Quinn Ewers, but maybe they can have some. Maybe Bijan Robinson can have some success with something, but no, I they're gonna shut them down on defense. Like they're just gonna score at will, and then they're gonna stop Texas from doing anything. Like they might be covering the -20 at the half. To be honest with you, I think they will. But the problem is we get to take advantage of this line because Texas is a very public team. A lot of money comes in on Texas on any given week, so that means we get to bet this under 3 scores. So yay us. So yeah, we just like yeah, this could be really bad. I am like this is at noon. There's not a lot of other games on at noon. Duke Northwestern is actually on at noon. I'll be watching this game, but yeah, they're gonna this game could be over by the second quarter.
I think the first half is the play there. Who knows, like, when it just gets way out of hand. I don't know if they'd cut it to under 21, but I think that first half is probably a safer play.
The interesting thing is I could see Sark drawing up like a couple of cute plays. Like we could see like Alabama score a touchdown and then Texas score a touchdown and then Alabama scores a touchdown, but then they get an intercept. Like then they just stop Texas from scoring. So theoretically, if you want, wait if once Texas scores, assuming it's like 7-7 or something, immediately log into your book and then just hammer that whatever that spread is at that point. It's probably like 13 and a half or
Mm,
something. Because like
yeah.
I could see that. Like I could see Sark drawing up one really cute touchdown play that stumps Nick Saban, and then Saban's like, okay, now you're done. You're done now. That's enough fun for you for today.
Okay. Next, Tennessee at Pitt. This opened at Tennessee giving 5. Now it's up to 6.5.
Yeah.
Um, I might just have an unfair bias against Pitt because their quarterback's a wet blanket and their coach is an idiot. But man, I can't see them hanging with Tennessee. Tennessee is just going to score so many points. Got to point out too that West Virginia dropped a lot of passes that JT Daniels threw on the money, and that shouldn't be surprising if you're familiar with Jared Dagey, who was the quarterback before JT Daniels. They probably just weren't used to having balls thrown right at them. I think that Tennessee might not punt more than once all game,
Wow.
and I see Pitt punting at least 3 times.
I I like here's the thing. I completely agree with that and I could see it. Like I could see Tennessee win this game by like 21. And I think that's probably the modal outcome, but like watching that Pitt West Virginia game when you just saw that pass deflect off of the West Virginia's wide receiver's hands right into the the Pitt player, and then like the Pitt D back, and then just running it down for a pick six. Like I just that was traumatizing. I mean, I had the +7.5, so it wasn't particularly traumatizing, but like I was just like, this is ridiculous, and like I worry that something like that could happen again. And like Pitt has no business hanging around in this game, but I feel like it's dangerous. I would love to play, and I probably will end up playing Hendon Hooker, the quarterback for Tennessee, over passing touchdowns, and we could do some. You could do some of those plays, but like yeah, no, I'd rather play some props on that. But like 6.5, I think 6.5 is about right. But like I worry that something bad, like something just stupid will happen, and then they'll end up losing by like 4 or something, and then you're like, could have had it, but no, it's I worry about that one a lot.
What do you think that number on Hooker will be? Like 4?
No, it'll be like 2.5, and you'll probably get
Wow,
plus money on the
really?
over 2.5. You probably will get plus money on the over 2.5. They usually don't have those lines as that large, but we'll have to see. But if it's over 2.5 even over 2.5 even money up, I'll take that. Yeah, if I get like plus 120 on over 2.5, I'll take that for sure.
So I didn't see any of Tennessee, sorry, hosting Ball State. That just wasn't a game I was going to watch. But I had heard that Tennessee was snapping the ball basically like 6 seconds on average from the end of the preceding play.
Wow.
It's there, yeah. I can't see them in a game that's gonna be that many possessions. I can't see Pitt just trading punches with them. Yeah, I think it's gonna take a handful of stupid plays, and I don't know. Can they get that lucky again? I don't know. I like Tennessee here. Um, that when it opened at 5, that seemed really short to me. But again, I might be biased too. So, Kentucky is getting 7 at the Swamp.
That's changed now, I think. It is that line's moved around a lot. I've seen it at different places in different it's now 5. I guess. But I've seen it bounce around. I saw it 4.5, and I saw it 7. I've seen it. It's now 5. It's bouncing all over the place. But it's for me. This is danger. Because every year this is always the one that trips. Florida always gets tripped up by Kentucky, and we actually kind of like as a season we kind of like Kentucky and Will Levis, their quarterback. I'm scared. Now again, we just had a great section where we had a glowing review of Billy Napier and smart decision making, and maybe this year is different. Maybe they don't do something stupid this year. But like that's a little dangerous for me. I'm really surprised that Florida is getting points here. I thought maybe Kentucky is actually I believe higher rated than ranked than Florida right now. No, basically even, depending on the poll. Florida's ranked higher in the AP, but they're basically even in the coaches. But I don't know. I worry about this game from a Florida standpoint. I worry Florida's not going to be able to do that. I worry something stupid's going to happen and Kentucky will cover or win this game outright. What do you think?
I don't like to play transitive properties, but just for some context, I'm curious. Do you think if we take quarterback, offense, defense, and coaching, let's say, if I'm lining up Utah, and styles makes fights, but I'm just saying, like, just in terms of quality, I think Utah's got a better quarterback than Kentucky, although it's close-ish. I think Rising's got more upside, but maybe he's gotten a little fat numbers by playing against the Pac-12 versus Levis, the SEC. Maybe we call that a draw. Um, Offense, I think Utah's got a better offense. Kentucky maybe has a little more speed. I like the scheme of Utah and the continuity. Maybe that's a draw. These are pretty close, right? Defense, I don't think it's close. I think Utah's got an exceptional defense. Head coach, I like Mark Stoops. I think that Whittingham's on another level. Um, so Florida was basically, I don't want to say it was a coin flip, but that game really could have gone either way. If you're winning in a, on an end zone interception, that was basically a 50-50 game more or less. Should they be giving more than a field goal to Kentucky? Um, I don't know. It's I don't know. I just Florida's such an unknown that the other thing too is that game just really shoved it at my face in terms of all the stuff I was talking about Anthony Richardson. Um, and basically he's Tim Tebow, I guess now. Uh, I I don't know what to make of this game. It's a tricky one for me. It's one I have to watch just for that reason. You know, it's hard for me to take Kentucky on the road. That's the thing. That's a hostile environment. This is one I don't think I can bet on. I don't even want to make a pick.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Maybe props, maybe Anthony Richardson over rushing or over rushing TDs. You can get him rushing TDs at some point. The thing of it is, I actually don't think he's Tim Tebow. The thing of it is, his Heisman odds have crashed. Like he was at like I think
Uh,
80 to 1 or so. I got him at that. He's down to like 16 on some books, depending. Like he's just. And the thing of it is, he actually could be like if he loses this game, then he'll go right back. But like if he wins this game, there's going to be some serious juice
yeah.
on Florida, and like that Florida Georgia game will decide the SEC East. Well, with the exception of Tennessee, Tennessee could give them some trouble, but like again, like this Florida, those are generally spaced out those games. So like this Florida team, like watch out, and also he could be high. Like the thing of it is, Bryce Young had like what he had like what 3 passing touchdowns or 2 rushing touchdowns against Utah State.
Yeah, I think it's like 5 total.
Yeah, but like there's way more hype on Richardson now. Now to be fair, those are not the same thing, right? Anthony Richardson has like 2 rushing touchdowns against Utah. That's great, right? But at the same time, like that Utah's a good team. Utah State is not a particularly good team, right? So those are not the same things, right? But at the same point in time, like this Florida team, like you almost start trying to count down and be like, okay, what does Anthony Richardson need to win the Heisman now? And like he had his passing stats were not particularly great. He only passed for like he passed for under 200 yards. He
Yeah.
ran for quite a lot of yards. The profile reminds me a little bit of Lamar Jackson, which is kind of like a worse Lamar Jackson at this point at least. But at the same point in time, he was playing against Utah, a team that we think has really good defense, right? So let's wait out a couple weeks. But honestly, if you're looking at a Heisman bet to make right now, I don't particularly hate Anthony Richardson. Like I got it at a much better number, so I'm not betting it now. But
Yeah.
if you're listening to this podcast, put something on that because if they beat Kentucky and they beat Georgia, like at what point, like if he loses, like at some point he's gonna have a cushion. Like what level does he need to, like if he loses the SEC championship game to Bryce Young, he still wins? Does he still win the Heisman? Like if they're undefeated going into that, does he win the Heisman?
Depends on a lot of other stuff that has to happen elsewhere.
That is true.
Um, but you couldn't have asked for a better beginning than what you saw.
Exactly.
Basically,
Yeah.
I literally thought there was no chance. I think I tried to talk you off of that in the preseason pod, and I think you just patted me on the head and said, just watch, young
Yeah.
buck or old buck. The one thing to keep in mind too, this is interesting, is now that there's some not film on him, now there's some Billy Napier film on him. Now that Mark Stoops, who's a good defensive guy, has an idea, does he adjust, and does Napier have a counterpunch kind of in his back pocket for what kind of adjustments there might be? Kind of the game within the game that'll make this an interesting game to watch. No, but I'm definitely gonna. That kicks at the same time as or around USC Stanford, so that'll definitely be my backup game.
Oh, does it? I think it's.
It's like it's 4 Pacific, and USC
Oh,
Stanford
okay.
30. So
Yeah, USC Stanford is 7:30. That game's
yep,
at 7, yeah, so there.
yeah.
Do you have the dual screen? Like do you picture in picture or do you have
I
multiple
can't do
monitors?
that. I I,
No?
I
Oh.
can. It's enough to stay on one game.
Oh, okay.
So yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Next we talked about this one. Duke at Northwestern. Northwestern now giving 10. Sounds like we both like Duke.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten about the that quarterback at Duke. Makes me more inclined to put a little something on the money line on the Blue Devils.
Yeah, that game's at noon, so you can watch that game. The only two games at noon really are the Kansas State Missouri game. There's Georgia State, North Carolina, Alabama, Texas though. Like I mean, that game can be over pretty quick, so you can go on to Duke Northwestern and see Duke crushing them because there's not a lot of games on at in that 1 o'clock window. There's a couple, but not a lot. So
Yeah, one that I'm not going to talk about, but interesting in that same window is UTSA at Army, and that's only a 2 point game. Um, Interesting that it's only a 2 point game. That figures that it might be more of a game that you initially might think.
yeah, I don't know who I'd favor in that game. The question is, and we won't know the answer to this until after the next, because the Houston plays the next window. But is UTSA good or is Houston bad? Right? Like, is Houston bad this year? That's why UTSA was like get close to them, or like because we said we penciled regression for UTSA. We're like, okay, that's it, the fun's over, meeps, you're good now. But like they were still pretty competitive against Houston. Like, can they be now? The Coastal Carolina crushed. Well, not crushed. They beat Army by 10 points. But like, can they do the same? Can like will UTSA hold against Army? Like Army is actually a surprisingly not bad team. They're surprisingly not bad independent. So
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, interesting early window there. Next game I wanted to get to is South Alabama at Central Michigan. Central Michigan only giving 4. And what's interesting to me is Central Michigan scored, I think, was it 42 at Stillwater? Um, they were in the 40s, I know that. Maybe 44. And they're only giving 4 at home to South Alabama, which is interesting. I think that speaks a lot. Do you have a total on this one?
yeah, 59.
Wow. Okay. That's interesting because okay, that's saying that they don't believe in Central Michigan's defense at all then. South Alabama had some improved quarterback play. Now they played, I think it was Nichols, but they held Nichols to like under 200 yards too. So the -4 at home basically is saying this is almost a coin flip. I made the big case for South Alabama. That's why this is more interesting than an average game to me. This is interesting to me. I might grab South Alabama money line. It wouldn't be, a huge money line payoff, but it's almost a G5 version of this line. A little bit stinks a little bit.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. Central Michigan did things against Oklahoma State, things that weren't expected to do. They actually
Yeah,
came relatively close in that game. But yeah, South Alabama is another kind of interesting team as well. So we'll have to see on that one. That's kind of one I'd be interested to see the result in. But yeah, I actually really do like Central Michigan though going forward.
I thought you would. You tried to talk me into them against Oklahoma State, and you were right.
Yeah,
Yeah. Middle Tennessee at Colorado State -5. You know, not enough data points on Colorado State, so I'm not going to make a big bet on this. I think I like Colorado State here, based on just how horrible Middle Tennessee was, very much in line with they've been for the last couple years. Colorado State, the Jay Norvell blood transplant being brought to Fort Collins, home game for them. I think they were on the road last week. Yeah, they're at Michigan. So this is a good spot for them. I think. Is that still at 5?
it's 9 now. Yeah.
Whoa, okay, that seems more like. I still like that. I mean, Middle Tennessee with all the points they gave up to JMU.
Well, the
I
question
think,
is James Madison good or is Middle Tennessee bad? That's the question.
yeah, fair. James Madison was an FCS team last year.
No, I know, but at the
A
same
nice
time,
one.
Middle Tennessee
Yeah.
State won a bowl.
Yeah, but okay, who'd they play? Wow, did they really?
I think they did. I thought they did. Let me check that. Uh,
Let me see.
we're just gonna furiously Google this now.
They beat Toledo.
Yeah.
They went 7-6. Yeah, I'll go against middling team from Conference USA with Jay Norvell. 9 seems a lot more like it though. Um, yeah, maybe I'll just make a chicken money line play and just take liberty in that, or take solace in that. Um, all right, UAB. We talked about this one a little bit.
Mm.
Giving less than a touchdown. Is that at Liberty? It's got to be, right, for the line to be that small.
Probably. Let me check. But I believe so.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's up a point. Yeah, I think that's UAB best conference or best QB in Conference USA. Liberty. Like I said, the only thing to like about them is that Charlie Brewer is hurt. They weren't good at all last year outside of Malik Willis, and I just don't like where they are, where they're headed. So definitely like UAB here. Likewise on your end.
Yeah, I already I placed that bet already. I do like UAB. I think with college football you see sometimes lines that like look right but then they just get crushed and like this like the BYU line versus um
South Florida
USF.
last week.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was -12. I got it at
Yep.
randomly went down to -11.5, smashed it. Not even close. Not even remote. I think it was like 50-21 at the end. Like not even remotely a sweat on that game. Which
Yeah.
is it's like usually when it's like not a sweat, you're like, oh well, that was you're like +20 and the game's like tied or something. It's not like yeah, I bet -11.5 and I didn't have to worry about that game at all.
Yeah. Yeah, so we agree on that one. Louisville is getting almost a touchdown, getting 6.5 at UCF. I don't know where to go with Louisville. I guess if I'm going to make a case for them, it would be, I can definitely make a case that Syracuse had a good running game last season, and they still do. They have a good defensive coordinator in Tony White, who is still there. And then they had a huge upgrade in offensive coordinator. They got actually Virginia's old offensive coordinator, who had Brendan Armstrong putting up ridiculous numbers at Virginia. Um, this line almost stinks, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. Like I'm looking at that line and it's like because again, this is a UCF team. They don't have this isn't Dylan Gabriel anymore, right? This isn't like the UCF teams of old that were really really good. I worry like I think this might get to 7. This line just stinks for me. I feel like this is a get right spot for Louisville. I think we all kind of liked Louisville earlier in the season and we saw what happened there with Syracuse and we're just like, "Oh, we're really." But like what if Syracuse is actually like good? Right? Like this
Mm-hmm.
is the thing, right? Like if Syracuse is actually good, that means Louisville is actually not bad and at that point then can not bad beat like UCF, and I kind of think they can. So, especially with 6.5 points. So, like, I wait a couple days. This is a Friday night game. I wait a little, well, Friday early Friday night game. I'd wait a couple days and then maybe spring on this game. I think this game could be a spot play.
Yeah, fair. I'm not going to touch this. I guess, what happened at Syracuse is so counter to the preseason narrative. I'm just kind of just going to say I don't know about Louisville. Can't really tie a story to the team at this point. Next, Virginia is getting 4.5 at Illinois. Um, Boy, Tommy DeVito just has picked up where he left off at Syracuse in terms of just being a bad quarterback.
Yeah,
And now I'm going to give points to a new coach in a rebuild in Virginia.
but Brennan Armstrong though.
True. This seems like one of those price discovery games where the market could be all over the place, and 4.5 is probably a compromise on a lot of different opinions, I'm guessing.
Yeah, like seeing this line because I know we usually say that 5.5 is the line, or people are just like, I have no idea what's gonna like. I feel like this is like we have no idea what's gonna happen this game. Like they're like anything could like Virginia could win by 20, Illinois could win by 5. Like we have no idea what's gonna happen in this game. I feel like that's basically what that line is saying. Like they have no idea.
Do you have an idea?
I mean, I like taking 4.5 against Illinois. I mean, Wyoming, they beat Wyoming. Wyoming did come back and was able to beat Tulsa, but also Illinois lost a game against Indiana that they should not have lost. Like that, but that Illinois quarterback was horrible. Like the Indiana quarterback was pretty bad too. Like they that was really bad performance by Indiana. Somehow they lost that game. I gotta think at some point that this Virginia team can put it together against Illinois. Like I don't hate Virginia here. I actually kind of do like Virginia.
Yeah, I can't play this one. If I Yeah, I might if I would probably take Virginia just, Armstrong versus Tommy DeVito. If we start from there and I'm getting points to go against Tommy DeVito, that would be the angle I'd kind of start with and build out from there, I guess.
Yeah.
BYU given a 2.5 at Baylor. That's a little surprising. I know BYU just kind of curb stomped our Bulls of South Florida, but man, Baylor is a home dog.
The interesting thing is this is now 3.5. So
Wow.
I snapped the 2.5. So that means I have a great arbitrage opportunity here. I could get the 3.5 and call it a day. I could, and I don't know if that's a good idea or not though, but I could. Um, but like, yeah, I kind of do like BYU here. BYU was a really good team, and this is going to be another big 12 conference matchup next year. So we'll get to see this game a lot more often. Um, but yeah, I kind of do like BYU. I don't have my model fully functional on this stuff yet, but yeah, I don't mind. I don't mind the Brigham Young. Baylor seems. I mean, I think Baylor has taken a bit of a step back this year, but I don't know. They could still be good. So like, this is why this game is actually secretly really good. Although I think only what are either of these teams? No, Baylor's 9, BYU's 21. It should not like it's so weird to see like the ninth ranked team versus the 21 ranked
Hmm.
team and number 21. Oh, it's Baylor at BYU. Sorry, because this is at night, so they're in Provost.
Okay.
But like
Yeah, that makes sense.
it's so weird seeing like the number 21 team laying 2.5 against the number 9 team. It just shows how insane, like how stupid these rankings are that they don't mean anything because the
Yeah.
books are actually correct. So I kind of do like BYU. Give me the Cougars.
Yeah. Um, Boy, that's interesting. Why is Baylor even playing this game? Just BYU they got a really good schedule together this year in terms of like tough opponents. They actually, if they go undefeated, they have a claim to get the playoff spot. They've got enough tough teams. And
I
they
think that was the point. That was the point. I think.
Yeah. Um, I like Aranda so much as a defensive coordinator. Yeah, I can't bet on this one. Good game to watch though. Weird matchup too. Baylor at BYU. Just
Well,
although you said we get used to it though. It's going to
yeah,
be a conference game. Yeah. Yeah, I can't play that one. Oregon State. Yeah, let's see, where is that game? Is that at Fresno?
yeah, it's at Fresno.
Okay. And Fresno's actually, yeah, giving 1 or 1.5, depending on where you shop. Man, yeah, we talked about this one a little too. Again, is Fresno State going to be caught looking ahead? You know what? It's not even their home opener, but I'm sure that this will be a sellout. It'll be a hyped up crowd. Anytime that you get a Power Five team that goes to Fresno, stupidly, I don't know why you did that, Oregon State. Bad choice. Um, you're gonna get, if not Fresno State's best effort, you're gonna get their best home crowd. Um, Boy, this is tough. I would just say the line looks right to me. This is a coin flip to me. I can't make a case really. The thing is, I can't make a case against either team. Can you?
Not really. This is one where you could say like whoever scores first just immediately bet the other team's spread. Like if Oregon State scores first, then be like, cool, Fresno State plus 7.5, or if Fresno State scores first, you're like, okay, cool, Oregon State plus like 7.5 or something. So like those are the kind of things you can do. Player props potentially, I don't know. Oregon State's definitely recovered in the last couple of years. Like this, after watching the Oregon game and the Oregon State game, I'm like, okay, I think Oregon State's going to win the Civil War. Well, it's not called the Civil War anymore. I think it's called something else. But yeah, they're going to win that. They're going to win that game in Thanksgiving. So that's um, that was my first thought. Like seeing Oregon State crush Boise, I'm like, yeah, I think they're going to win this. I think they're going to beat Oregon this year. But no, it's yeah, I don't. I I think both like I could see the case for both teams, honestly, but I don't know. I'd have to run my model on that one and see.
Yeah, and I think these are the two games I think outside of Notre Dame that I had the most concern for USC. As in terms of losable games, I'm scared to death of playing at Oregon State, and I don't like hosting Fresno. Especially since the Coliseum was nowhere near sold out, and Fresno will bring a ton of fans. Um, yeah, I can't make a play here, but yeah, I think good idea. Basically, whoever scores first, just take the other team in game.
Mm-hmm.
Arizona hosting Mississippi State. Arizona getting what's that up to now? You said
Every time I look at that, it's different. It keeps going up to 11 now.
yeah. I'm showing 10.5 to 11.5. Yeah, this is that game that kicks it at 8 o'clock Pacific, so that's 10 o'clock Starkville time. Um, Kind of, I guess, when I look at Arizona and what they did, yeah, I'm down on San Diego State, but it's not like San Diego State is does not know how to play defense at all. I think you've basically got, you've got something on the offense at Arizona, with Arizona between Delora and McMillan and Cowing. Where exactly does that calibrate in terms of what figures to be probably I'd say this year maybe a middle class to upper middle class SEC team who's going to be kicking off at 10 o'clock on their body clock time, 10 o'clock p.m. Um, I'm thinking that will be a very full house at Arizona. They've been starving for any kind of football that's been worth watching for years, basically since Rich Rodriguez was shown the door. Um, on the other hand, you've got Will Rogers, and that whole Mike Leach offense kind of doesn't give a crap about wherever they play. They'll play in a parking lot. Um, 10.5, that's a lot of points to give a home team that actually just,
Might
has
be
really
good.
shown a proof of concept. I'm not going to bet this, but I think just based on that, I'd probably take, there's a lot, all the stupid intangibles lie with Arizona.
Yeah, I actually really like Arizona here, and because their new quarterback is actually really good, so I really do like Arizona in this game. Mississippi State, they did beat Memphis and covered, but Memphis could kind of be bad. So I'm not the biggest like Will Rogers again. I'd love to bet Will Rogers over passing TDs because sometimes you don't get it when they play like G5 teams. Like usually you like when it's Power 5 versus Power 5, you get props for these guys, but when it's not, then you don't get it. So, but yeah, I would love to see. I'd love to bet Arizona in this game. I'm excited for that.
Yeah, that'll be a fun game to watch for sure. Um, and then last, I don't know why we're including this other than you just wanted to talk about Old Dominion slash the awesome kicking game for East Carolina. Boy, that was rough.
That was oh man, that was so sad. Like they're like he misses it and then he gets a second chance and then misses it again. Here's the thing though, because NC State, we thought like, and we both kind of thought that line was short. I never touched that game though
Yeah.
because we thought that line was short. I expected it was going to be like, yeah, okay, ECU makes it a game, and then they get crushed, right? Like they're like, oh, they're down like 6 in the third, and then all of a sudden, NC State pulls it out. But like maybe NC State maybe we're a little too high on NC State, kind of in the same kind of category as Louisville. I don't know. Like Old Dominion, it was 13 and a half. It's 12 and a half now. Um, I don't hate it. I think I don't know. I kind of like it. I don't know if East
Well,
Carolina.
let me ask you this. Let
Okay,
me ask you this. East Carolina looked impressive, and I was skeptical about them too. Not just, they're not in NC State's class. I thought that there was a lot of carryover to, hey, they finally made a bowl, and there's a little too much shine on them. And they legitimately, now maybe NC State looked over them, but they went clearly toe to toe with NC State for 4 quarters. So my question to you is this line short? If it's at 12 and a half now,
12 and a half. I've seen it bounce back. I don't know. Like the thing of it is,
Old Dominion got completely outrushed and out everything except for Virginia Tech just made an insane number of mistakes. I mean, 4 interceptions and a botched field goal attempt that goes for a touchdown. Um,
oh, yeah, you're right. They did have that. Yeah, so maybe there is some value on East Carolina then. Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, there might be some value on there. It'd be funny if Old Dominion just starts wrecking through the ACC. They just like start taking like we should be in the ACC, but
Maybe Old Dominion is this year's Northern Illinois. Well, they'll just they'll have 8 wins and they should have gone like 3-9.
plus 16 turnover margin.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a good point. I'll have to think about that now. But yeah, maybe the Pirates aren't bad.
yeah, I'll
Um,
put it this way: I am a believer in Old Dominion this year, and I wouldn't bet them here with your money.
okay.
Not saying I'd bet East Carolina, but I definitely would not bet Old Dominion. If there's a side to play, it would be the Pirates.
That's a good point. Yeah, because the thing is, they were competitive with NC State, who we think is a better ACC team, and they're going to be pissed because, like, that guy, how many kicks is that guy going to try between now and game day? Like, he's going to do 100 reps,
You're
200
assuming he's still the
practice kicks.
kicker? I wouldn't even assume that.
I mean, it was like the PAT was bad, and then he had the chance to redeem himself and win the game. How often do you even get that? And then he
Yeah,
just, poor kid.
yeah. College kickers, as they say.
Yes, college kickers.
Yeah. So
I think that's it for us for this week. That was pretty long. But yeah, great podcast. We talked about a lot of fun stuff and a lot of the stuff from week one. And the thing of it is it's important to after the first week, basically first week of the season, week zero doesn't particularly count. But there's a lot of teams we were like high on, like Louisville, and then we've kind of thrown that in the trash bin. But we were right to be high on some teams. I think overall we were mostly right about a lot of our forecasts and projections, but wrong in some ways. But I think we're pretty happy that's mostly right. But again, we've now seen 1 week now that the key here isn't to overreact to the next week, right? The idea isn't, I mean, maybe exception of Louisville, but with some of them, it's like, okay, we saw roughly some results were surprising, some weren't. The key isn't to overreact to the next week. The key is to basically like moderate and be like, okay, maybe this is correct, maybe this isn't correct, etc. Right? So yeah, let's see what this next week brings. Let's see if some of the trends continue, if some teams pick it up, continue struggling, etc., etc. And yeah, we'll be back here next week, and we'll recap next week and recap and preview week 3 for everybody. Until then, see you guys.